Good evening. I'm Bill Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, and I'm pleased to welcome everybody to tonight's meeting, the November 10th, 2015 meeting of the Brighton Town Board. We welcome you whether you're here at the meeting in person or watching us on your computer or on Brighton's cable access, community access TV channel. We appreciate your attendance and we appreciate your participation in local government. I would note that the agenda for tonight's meeting and all supporting materials are available on the back table if you're here in the room. If you're watching on your computer or on your TV, the same material is available on the Town of Brighton website, townofbrighton.org. Go to the meeting minutes and agenda page and you'll find the agenda for tonight's meeting again. Not only the agenda, but all of the supporting material that we're reviewing right up here. So you'll have the opportunity to have all that material. A couple of things I want to note. In case of an emergency, the Town Hall emergency alarm system will be activated. If you hear that, please leave the room immediately, either through the door to my right, turn right, go down the stairs, out the back door of Town Hall, and away from the building, or through either of the double doors in the rear of this room, through the lobby, out the main front doors, down the front stairs, and again, away from the building. Occasionally we do experience, or we may experience, technical difficulties with the live broadcast of the meeting on our cable access TV channel. If you do have trouble with the video or the audio, please call Time Warner at 756-5000. Again, that's 756-5000. I'd like to start with the pledge to the flag, and I'm going to ask Town Board Member Louise Novros to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Louise. We will be starting with the open forum portion of the meeting. The open forum is an opportunity for members of the audience to address the town board about any issue relating to the town of Brighton, whether or not it's on tonight's agenda. If you'd like to speak to the town board during the open forum, please raise your hand. I'll recognize members of the audience who do wish to speak. If you'd come to the podium, needs to be amplified so that folks at home can hear. Please give your name and address if you would. Please direct your comments to the town board, not to the audience. Please be courteous and try to keep your comments as concise as possible. Now, if you're at home or if you're somewhere else watching this on your computer, you can also call in during the open forum if you have a question or a comment. The phone number is 303-3060. That's 303-3060. Someone will take your comment or your question and get it to us. If you are deaf or if you are hearing impaired, you can participate in our open forum by use of our TDD line. The number for that TDD line is 784-5205. Again, our TDD line, 784-5205. We'll now start the open forum. Is there anyone that would like to address the town board tonight during the open forum portion of our meeting? All right, then in that case we'll move on with the rest of our agenda. And can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Any questions or additions? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. And can I have a motion to approve and file the town board meeting minutes for the October 14th and October 28th, 2015 town board meetings?
So moved. Second?
Discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Can I have a motion to receive and file the communications we have on the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
We have two items tonight. One is something we get regularly from Time Warner Cable, updating cable changes. Another is correspondence relating to the proposed Whole Foods Plaza project. I do just want to clarify, because a lot of people have asked me again, and I think in light partially of the newspaper article and the decision on the part of the Daniellis that they're planning to close the restaurant. We remain in the early stages of the review of this project. I can't stress enough. Those of you that have been watching know this, but I really do want to stress no decisions have been made yet by a long shot on this project. We are in the early stage of the environmental review process. Thanks to the comments we got from the public, input that was received and incorporated in our scope that the town board has approved and sent to the Daniellis. The Daniellis and their consultants are in the process of developing a draft environmental impact statement. That DEIS, as it's called, will rely on and must address the issues that the town board identified as significant environmental issues in that scope. And once DEIS has been submitted to us, we will review it. Our staff and our consultants will approve it. If we find, when we find, that it is complete and sufficient for public review, we will then schedule a public hearing. So I can't stress enough. Thank you for the correspondence, and thank you to everyone who has submitted their thoughts on the proposal, and we will take those into account, but we are still very much in the early stages of the review process. Any other comments on the communications? We have a motion and a second. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel,
Aye.
Councilmember Novros.
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Committee reports. Louise, Parks and Recreation and Community Services.
Parks and Recreation and Community Services has not met since the last town board meeting. Our next meeting is going to be on November 23rd at 4:30 Brookside School. The public is welcome.
Thank you. Chris, Finance?
Finance Committee met last week, Tuesday the 3rd. All the matters discussed, save one, are on tonight's agenda. We'll review them at that point. The one additional matter we reviewed at length with our insurance agent of the Paris Kerwin agency regarding our New York State, the workers' compensation insurance policies, and we're hopeful of being able to save some money over last year's expense, but we're still looking at other options as well. So Jerry Delberstein of Paris Kerwin is researching that for us.
And I believe we expect to be at our next meeting making a final decision.
That's great. That'll be next week. Next meeting will be Tuesday, November 17th at 3:30 in the Stage Conference Room, and everyone is invited to attend.
Thank you, Chris. Public Safety, Jason?
Yes, the Public Safety Committee met this morning, actually bright and early, and the bulk of the meeting was actually spent discussing the traffic calming matters on Bonnie Bray Avenue in the Roselawn neighborhood. And after actually 3 months of addressing it in a lot of detail at our meetings and a lot of effort from the police department and from the Public Works Department, we're still considering traffic calming measures, one of which will be a stop sign at Bonnie Bray at Glen Ellen. But in order to implement that, we're going to need to set a public hearing and notice that. So we're looking to set the date and time of the public hearing at our next town board meeting, and that will probably be heard during our December meeting. So it'll give the opportunity then to get further input from the neighbors and have anybody for or against that to come and speak at the public hearing, and we can take action. So hopefully that will begin to address some of those concerns and start to quiet the matter down a bit and address that issue in a satisfactory manner. So, and after that, there was the networking amongst the various agencies that serve the town of Brighton. And and then we set the date and time of the next meeting, which will be on Tuesday, December 8th. We meet at 8 o'clock in the morning in the lower level community meeting room, and the public is invited to attend.
Thanks, Jason, and I'll echo, thank you to the police department. You've spent a lot of time in generating data that I think both we and the neighbors appreciated receiving to better understand what the issues really are on that street, whether it's a matter of speed or whether it's really a matter of the configuration of the highway, the street, really. So thank you for that, and Tim, thank you for the work that you've done and the outreach you've made to that neighborhood as well. Jim, Public Works.
Public Works met just a week ago, and at that time, there were several matters we covered. One was the infrastructure on the Rollins Tract area off of Brookline. Mike Guyon, our town engineer, advised the committee that neighborhood focus meetings had been held, and the meetings are really targeted for specific areas within the neighborhood that have common concerns, and additional meetings are going to be conducted in the other areas in the neighborhood, but they're moving along with these focus meetings with the respective neighborhoods to really look at solutions for some of their drainage problems. More to follow on that.
And when you say neighborhoods, in that case, we're really doing it block by block.
Yes, we are.
Literally,
Right,
so
yes.
that each area that would potentially have a storm sewer
Exactly.
line can understand the specific area it would serve on that street and what the costs might be, what the layout
Yes.
might be.
As a matter of fact, Tim, was it 4 or 5 different blocks or neighborhoods? 4? Okay.
And I think Mike has spoken with 2 of them at this
Yeah.
point. Yep.
And the next item was a developmental proposal brought on by a developer that would be of really interest to us. The Rochester Psychiatric Center, which was closed years ago, the Terrence Building site, developer has proposed a conceptual plan for a possible redevelopment of that site, situated in Rochester as well as part of it in Brighton. It's proposed to be primarily a high-density residential in nature with some commercial and business aspects associated with the proposal. So that'll be interesting to see as that moves along. That's a 17-story building that we've been looking at for years. Been a virtual white elephant sitting there on Elmwood Avenue.
Are they going to demolish it?
Yes,
That's the idea.
that's the proposal.
Level it completely.
Although the majority of their project, of course, is in the city.
Yes, it is. It's just a
One
little,
stretch of it.
one stretch of it is in Brighton, the eastern part of it.
Yeah, about 17 acres of the entire parcel are in the city, and about 10 acres are in Brighton. There's a strip of land next to Brickstone. The larger piece that's in Brighton is sort of wrapped around the back of the Brickstone.
So when they demolish it, they'll demolish it so it will fall into the city with the asbestos, right? And
Well, there'll be asbestos, Louise, I think it's,
Regardless.
obviously, it's a matter that does have to be taken seriously, and they will be engaged in very extensive asbestos abatement
Yeah,
as
sure
part
will.
of the demolition.
Sure will. Next item was discussion of the incentive zoning request that the University of Rochester had submitted to revise the schedule of traffic study updates, which is based upon the timing of updates as approved in the incentive plan versus the actual onset of construction of the imaging building. So if that's approved, the first update would occur, I believe, in 2017, correct, Tim? Yeah, as opposed to instead of 2016. The next item was the reserve residential development. The representatives from the Anthony J. Costello Development provided the committee with an overview of proposed modifications associated with the construction of the loft buildings, which are along the canal, which would face directly on the canal. That includes a reduction in the number of buildings from 6 down to 5, and a reduction of height to a maximum of 4 stories, and a construction of a boathouse associated with that. So it'd be interesting to see as that one moves along as well through the review process.
And that really relates in large part to the decision that the town board made to allow them to have more units in the Brewerton neighborhood, convert those from traditional single-family homes to the
Yes.
The more patio home, condominium structure. Based on the maximum number of condominiums we had allowed them, that required them to take fewer condominium units in the loft building.
Right.
And this change reflects
Yeah.
that.
Basically a compromise, which is a reflection of the marketing demand case. The last item was the Crittenden Road sidewalk construction. Now, new sidewalks have been installed along the south side of Crittenden Road between West Squire Drive and the Crittenden Corners Plaza, which is down to West Henrietta Road. This has now provided a pedestrian link from the Rustic Village apartment complex to West Henrietta Road. So this project was made possible due to a community development block grant funding, which paid for 100% of the cost, which already we've gotten a very positive reaction on this. Tim, any comments on that?
Jim, only from the standpoint that as we look at the availability of grants such as this and where we need sidewalk and pedestrian access, this was a natural fit.
Yes.
As you know, through discussions, we had some logistical challenges to do the work within the New York State DOT right-of-way at West Henrietta Road. So we sort of regrouped and went back, and we decided the best plan of attack was to start at West Squire Drive and work ourselves to the west.
Yeah.
We will probably tackle the, if you want to call the challenges we have at the intersection of Crittenden and West Henrietta Road with pedestrian amenities such as the handicap ramps, the ped signals, and a number of other things at a future time. But it has really gotten us 90% of the way to West Henrietta Road, which allows a lot of the apartment dwelling folks to get there to the public transportation and other amenities.
And we have heard from Linda Reynolds,
Yeah, the
management
manager of Rustic
head
Village.
at Rustic Village, expressing her appreciation for that work.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Our next committee meeting will be Tuesday, December 1st at 9 a.m. in the lower level community meeting room. And again, as we've said, all of our committee meetings are open to the public.
Thanks, Jim. We have no old business tonight. New business, reading and approval of the claims. Chris?
Bill, tonight I've reviewed claims totaling $324,467.01. Those that caught my eye were, one, the sewer lining invoice for East Avenue, some $18,000. Again, that's, and Tim, again, if you'd kind of review that program, how that works and how it's saving us a lot of money.
It is, and it's very worthwhile, though, Chris. Again, on behalf of the sewer department and everybody in town, it's a phenomenal program that we do with alternative technology. We don't have to dig up the sewers to replace them, so we use technology that's out there, such as lining these. It reinforces the strength of the system. It waterproofs the system to a certain extent so we don't get extraneous flows. So the funding that the board gives us every year for this program allows us to do this, and generally it's off of county contract. The contractor is something we don't have to put a contract out ourselves. It's a very, if you want to call it, high-tech operation that allows us to do this with minimum inconvenience to the public, and it provides a great product and end product for us to do this. So we've been concentrating on the worst areas in town, which are we do have a very challenging sewer over on East Avenue that is an over-under sanitary and storm. And what it has effectively done as well is saved us the cost of replacing the state storm system at our cost to get in and take care of these sewers over in the area. We have noticed, a minimization or a lessening of the extraneous flows coming in, which help us, from the standpoint of sewer backups or surcharging and rain events and things of that nature. So kudos to Steve Zimmer and this whole sewer crew that, pretty much manage this and assist the contractor that does the work.
Is this product a flexible lining that's put down, or is it plastic? Or
It's a thermoset, and what they do is it's like a sock. It's sort of installed in a deflated condition, that's pulled in, and then what they do is when they get it from end point to end point, they cap off the one end, fill it with hot water, circulate it. The hot water actually
starts to catalyze the process because it's a two-part component, almost like an epoxy. And that's why it's thermoset, and the water forces it out against the inner diameter of the existing pipe. So it actually forces it out. It's a very slick fit. So you virtually lose no pipe diameter. You maintain your capacity, and after you cure it for a period of time with the warm water circulating in there, you pull it out, and it actually has virtually the same structural properties of the pipe that it's been inserted in. So it's a very, very innovative process that's been around for probably the better part of 30-plus years at this point, that we take full advantage of.
That's terrific. And the alternative would be to dig it up and replace with new pipe, and that would be
At a very high expense.
Disruptive.
Right, and it's much more time consuming to do it that way too than this.
And of course, it's more disruptive to traffic and.
Absolutely.
Well, other items, our court fines and fees went to the state for some $46,000. Also, another thing in Tim's area is a pressure washer for some $4,800. What do they use the pressure washer for, Tim?
We found that in areas where we have grease problems, it's very helpful to break up the grease in the lines. We do have a pretty thorough grease trap inspection that we do, Chris, but some of the grease traps are not outside. They're retrofits that are underneath the sinks and within the buildings, and it's easy for those to be flushed with hot water by the proprietors. And once it gets outside and it gets into the sewer lines, it will congeal again because the temperatures go down in the grease. And so we do have areas that are prone to grease. We also use the high pressure for cleaning and washing the interiors of the manholes, which is important to not only get grease off, but other things that accumulate within the system. So it's a tool that be well put to use.
Maybe I'm not glad I asked, but but it's a project that's got to be done. That's great. Refuse district, some $67,000, and September Electric through the county, some $56,000. And pony rides at the Halloween Fall Festival for $280. But it was a great event. But I find the claims to be in order, and I move that they be approved for payment.
Second.
And I can tell you, the lines for the pony rides were really, they didn't stop. In fact, they as did the balloon, the clown who did the balloon artist. They both had lines even at the appointed closing time, and both of them continued to provide the fun that they were doing for the kids. So it really was a successful day. By far the biggest crowd we've ever had for our fall festival, our family fall festival event. We ran out of candy, and we almost ran out of the donut holes in cider too, but not quite.
A great event.
So I think we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Jim?
Next item is to authorize the supervisor to execute an agreement with Electronic Field Productions to provide video production and cable television management services for next year, 2016. I move in the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
Discussion? The pricing is the same, and
Same good
they've
work
given
by
us
the
good
same
service. Yep. Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
group. Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Jim?
Next item is to declare a particular highway equipment as surplus and authorize the disposal of the same through the municipal auction and or as discarded as junk. I move in the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
And we really have two items listed. One is our
Yeah.
Pelican, a 2002 vintage street sweeper that was replaced through funding that was provided in the budget for this year. That, obviously, we will be selling. We'll be selling that through probably through Roy Teitsworth, who does the equipment auctions generally. And we certainly do expect to receive, a significant purchase price for that. There's also an AED that is no longer serviceable. They have to be replaced after a certain time. They're not reliable after a certain date, and obviously it's important to have current and working AEDs, so that will be disposed of as junk. Motion and a second for the discussion. Please call the roll, Dan.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mailing.
Aye. Jason?
Yes, the next matter seeks approval to appoint a particular person to the open position of permanent part-time security officer / court attendant, effective November 11, 2015, to fill recently vacated position due to an employee resignation. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
And the individual is Mark Kohler. I think we pronounce it Kohler. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mailing.
Aye. Jim?
Next item is to promote a particular person within the Highway Department to motor equipment operator effective November 16th to fill a recently vacated position due to retirement. I move on the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
Aaron Verstrate, a current employee, would be promoted to the MEO position. Tim, anything you have to add? Obviously, Aaron's a great employee.
Aaron is a very, very conscientious employee. Very happy to be able to promote him to this position, and it's a well-deserved position. And I expect nothing but the best from Aaron, because that's what he always provides us with.
Very good. Further discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mailing.
Aye. Louise?
The next matter is to authorize renewal of the intermunicipal agreement with the town of Pittsford for Brighton's provision of snow and ice control on Allens Creek Road for 2015-2016. I move on the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
I talk about this one a lot, but it's just a classic case of intermunicipal agreement. Allens Creek Road at Clover Street is in the town of Brighton. Allens Creek Road at East Avenue is in the town of Brighton. But in between, you have a stretch of Allens Creek Road that is in the town of Pittsford. For Pittsford to plow that stretch of Allens Creek Road, they would have to drive through the town of Brighton, presumably with their plow blade up. And that just makes no sense. So instead, the town of Pittsford pays us. We're plowing the two ends of that stretch of Allens Creek, and we continue on through Pittsford and plow that stretch as well. So makes good common sense, and it generates a little bit of money. Motion and a second. Any further comment?
Yeah. Tim, any further discussion with the town of Pittsford about that part of Whitestone Lane, which is at the same situation? Both ends we have, they have the middle.
Yeah, well, I've been talking to Paul Schenkel over in Pittsford, Jim, so discussions yet to be
Okay.
finalized, but we have talked about it.
Well, as we discussed in Public Works, this makes the same
Whitestone,
sense,
Malm.
just like Allens Creek.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
We'll have to see if
Yeah.
both parties find that it.
Yep.
So you've been in touch with them, that's,
Yeah, Paul, we have a great working relationship
Yeah.
with most of our neighboring, communities. I can't think of one that we don't have. That at staff level, where everything's very copacetic and it's a can-do type of attitude, so.
okay.
We do have a motion and a second. Anything further? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mailing.
Aye. Louise?
The next matter is approval to appropriate $66,575 in pre-authorized grant funding from the Monroe County Community Development Block Grant Program to support the Crittenden Road Sidewalk Project. I move on the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
This is the matter that Chris mentioned had been discussed in Finance Committee and will allow us to funding on that. That's really a financial matter at this point. Further discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Chris?
The next matter, Bill, was discussed at Finance. It's to seek approval of a new policy to provide health insurance declination provision to non-represented, non-elected, full-time employees. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney for the town.
Second.
The goal here is to incent current employees, and there's more detail in the policy itself, but to incent employees, non-represented employees, or represented employees already have in each of their contracts some provisions that relate to reimbursement made if they choose not to procure their health insurance through the town, and we wanted to extend that to our non-represented employees, but to do so in a way, to incent a large enough number to transfer that it will also save the town money. We want it to be a win-win, so that's the way the policy is crafted.
I think our employees should sit around their kitchen table and determine who has the better coverage for those that have marital coverage, et cetera. And again, we pay some $8,000 for a single policy, some $17,000, I believe it is, for a couple, and some $21,000 a year for a family health policy. If we can provide an incentive to an employee to decline the town coverage, there's a significant savings to the town. So we're doing what we can to promote that.
I would note that those are the gross premiums. A portion
Yes.
of those premiums are paid by our employees,
Under our contracts with them, yes.
up to 20%, depending on when they were hired. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Jason?
Yes, the next matter seeks approval to amend the domestic partner benefits for non-represented employees. We have two resolutions in our packet.
I would, if it is your intention to act to extend domestic partnership benefits to all non-represented employees regardless of gender or
That's the resolution, okay.
Yeah.
So with respect to this, the matter seeking
that
approval
would
to
be
amend
number 8, I believe, is
our domestic partner benefits for non-represented employees, I move that we adopt resolution number 8, which extends employee benefits to domestic partners of non-represented town employees, meeting the criteria of the policy without regard to the gender or gender identification of either domestic partner.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Discussion?
This is not tied to the other,
No.
to the next one. They're separate, but if one is approved, the other
We won't be
we
considering.
won't be considering.
Correct.
Bill, and I've discussed with everyone here that there is a difference of opinion on the board. The history of this is that in 2001, to right what the town government at that time, I believe, saw as a wrong or an injustice, where same-sex partners could not become married in the state of New York. To address that, same-sex domestic partners were then provided medical insurance coverage under our town policy, the same that would have been provided to a married person. I'm pleased to see now that that injustice has been resolved in the state of New York. Marriage is available to same-sex couples as it is for heterosexual couples, and employees can now get coverage for their spouse of either sex. The question now is, shall we expand that coverage in balance so that heterosexual domestic partners can get the same medical benefits that same-sex domestic partners would have? My thought is, one, looking at the basis for our policy to provide medical benefits for married persons, deals with the issue of marriage and the burdens and benefits of marriage, which is now available to all. I've had long experience in marriage, both as a practicing matrimonial attorney and 40 years being married to my dear wife, Alyssa. Now, marriage has benefits and burdens. If you ask Alyssa, perhaps more of the latter. But
At least the present company.
that's right. For me, it's been more of a benefit, I think. But maybe not so much a burden as a responsibility. Marriage is a social contract, and perhaps I get a little too philosophical about the issue because I am a lawyer and trained that way. But it's a social contract, and it's between the individuals to care for each other, and also to the community to be responsible for your spouse. There are enforceable legal obligations that gives the community an interest in marriage because of that. And that's why it historically has been difficult to get a divorce, less so today, but still it's overseen by the state. Those are legal obligations or enforceable obligations, enforceable by the parties and by the community. Now, for the town to provide medical benefits to a married person, that's to acknowledge that burden that the married person has, and it's to try to help mitigate that burden and that legal responsibility. A domestic partnership has no such legal or enforceable obligation to care and support for the other partner. It's strictly voluntary and can be severed at any time without restriction. And my opinion is that the town should not be called upon to provide a benefit to the employee that the employee, him or herself, is unwilling to undertake voluntarily through marriage. Therefore, I am voting no on the expansion of this. It's not a matter of gender equality. It's a question of a benefit that I don't think is warranted.
Thanks, Chris. Further comments?
But Chris, what you already have for same-sex marriage is already in our code that we can provide for them. So I think that in all fairness, if you're already doing it for same-sex, but saying to
Same-sex domestic partners, I think
Right.
you meant to say. Yeah.
then you turn to heterosexual domestic partners and say, sorry, we're not going to do.
I agree, Louise. It is unfair to provide for one but not for the other. And the choice is either to provide for both or
Or
eliminate
not.
it entirely.
But this is not addressing that, to
The
eliminate.
alternative resolution, which you'll see, would be to eliminate that coverage for all domestic partnerships. Because it would require, it would create a hardship perhaps on those the few people here that do have that coverage as domestic partners, same-sex domestic partners. It would be delayed, and the proposal was to delay it till January 1, 2017. So that it would be eliminated totally. At this point, parties of all sexes can marry, and that's all they need to do to get the full medical benefits provided to all married people. But it would eliminate that unfairness. It would be consistent then that no domestic partner would receive the medical benefit.
Do we have any number of how many people would take advantage of this?
Louise,
Both hetero and
I'm not going to discuss specific current employees and their status, but we have from consultants gotten some expectation that an average of about 1% of employees would typically be added if you go to domestic partners without regard to with same sex or opposite sex. And we anticipated actually a little more than that potentially in our budget calculations for 2016.
Bill,
Chris,
I believe.
I want to ask if there are other members who would like to comment. I will be, but I'll wait.
Well, I believe what Louise is asking about is how large an expense are we looking at here? It's not a large expense. And I believe that there's some difference of opinion in many institutions, other towns, other industries, et cetera. They go both ways on this issue. And
The way I look at it is that right now our policy, given the changes in both state and federal law, in order to make the policy equitable, the town's faced with two choices: either expand domestic partner coverage to opposite-sex domestic partners, or revoke domestic partner coverage for same-sex couples. That's the way to make it fair and equitable in my mind. And I agree. I hear what you're saying about marriage, because I mean, also in my practice, I have people coming in and people wanting to buy property together, people wanting to invest money together. The institution of marriage provides a lot of legal benefits. There's estate benefits. There's family rights. There are provisions in order to, in case one spouse needs to go into a nursing home, a way to transfer assets to the spouse that's still in the community. That way that spouse is not impoverished as a result of nursing home costs. All kinds of benefits out there. So I understand why it's important for couples that are in a committed relationship to get married. And now it's available to couples in New York State without regard to gender. But just because that's advisable to my clients, and that's the way I feel, I don't think that, I don't feel comfortable legislating that to our employees. So I think that the more equitable resolution would be to open it up to both domestic partners of both same-sex and opposite-sex couples.
Now, I have one question that sort of relates to this, is you said it's not going to really be that big of an increase in funding, but between that and the previous resolution with the non-declination, are we going to really be putting out a lot of money?
No. Remember, the declination will only kick in if it saves us money. And the differential per employee could be as much as $13,000 plus for each incremental employee who currently has a family plan that chooses to get their insurance through their spouse or their partner. So, and again, if we assume that 1 to 1.5% of our current employees will add domestic partner benefits, it's not they work to offset each other, they don't amplify each other. And again, we did anticipate in the preparation of the budget some increase in our healthcare based on the possibility that we would do this. Any further comments?
Bill?
I do have several.
I don't know if you want to hear from one of the town board members who was
Sure.
on the town board at the time that the
Sure.
2001 policy was adopted. Louise says no.
Happy to hear from you, Ken.
Suzanne's been kind enough to send me the resolution and backup materials that were used in 2001. And it brought to mind the reasons why we were looking to add this policy. And just speaking for myself, it wasn't merely looking at the issue of same-sex marriage. It was looking at a broader equitable issue of domestic partnership. And one of the things that I remember focusing very hard on was what Chris spoke to, which was that issue of commitment, that issue of responsibility, that issue of necessary nexus between the two people, a connectedness that would make it important enough to be able to extend partnership benefits to each other and to them. And so in the policy that was adopted back in 2001, there was some specific criteria about what types of people would be qualified? What type of relationship would be qualified for that domestic partnership? And it's not just two people living together with no particular commitment to each other. Obviously, they would have to reside together, but the other criteria, were they in a relationship of mutual support in which they were committed to the financial, physical, and emotional support of one another? Have they held themselves out as being domestic partners to the greater community? Do they intend to remain together as domestic partners? And perhaps most importantly for this policy, are they financially interdependent? Are they relying on each other financially? And those criteria are used to determine whether any couple is eligible for domestic partner benefits. So for me, as a town board member, I thought it was important to extend these benefits because of the equitable nature of extending domestic partner benefits to couples that were financially committed, that were planning to live together like a married couple. Maybe they didn't go through the ceremony, maybe they didn't pay the fee, maybe they didn't, have the ritual, but they certainly had the commitment to each other in their relationship. And the sense of it was, and Sandy's letter from back in 2001 really reflects this, is that in order for us as a municipality to continue to deliver high-quality services, we want to make sure that we have great employees and always have great employees, and that we retain those great employees that we have. And that this was yet another way to ensure that we would retain those employees. And just because they were not married doesn't mean that they had to go off and find some other employer who might be willing to extend them those domestic partner benefits. So, so I supported it back then. If I were out there at the podium speaking in open forum, I'd be encouraging you to support this now. But I do think it's consistent with the policies of 2000 that were put in place in 2001, consistent with this board's own action in passing the local gender law and the concepts behind that, to not look to someone's gender, not look to someone's gender identification, but look to the true essence of the relationship and say, is this a relationship of mutual commitment that should have these domestic partner benefits extended to them, and employee benefits, so that they can continue to be good employees of the town of Brighton and prosper as part of our town community. So that's the little bit that I recall, and why I supported it back then, and I was happy to draft it this time around.
Thanks, Ken. I now can cut in half what I was going to say, because you did make a lot of the points that I was going to make. Yes, that the town board and we were sort of in opposite positions. I was sitting in your chair back then.
I wasn't sitting there, though.
No, you weren't, but you were close. I was the town attorney when the board did that, and yes, it was to right a wrong that we certainly believed at the time, that the LGBT community should have the right to marry, and because laws were preventing them from doing it, that we thought that our same-sex domestic partners should have the right to domestic partner benefits. But there were and are more reasons. One of them is employee equality. You mentioned that. But I also think we give these benefits to married couples for more reasons than just recognizing some legal and societal bond. We don't, because there's a reason. We give them to we give them to the wife, husband, partner. We also give them to the kids. And the reason we do all of those things, not only we want to be an attractive place to work, but we want to make sure our employees, frankly, aren't worried about how their spouse, how their partner, how their children are going to get important health care benefits that have increasingly become very, very expensive. And that's true whether couples are married or whether they're domestic partners. And it's true whether they're same-sex married or opposite-sex married. By the way, you mentioned gender. It is absolutely also true if one or both of those individuals are transgender. And I salute Governor Cuomo. What he did was absolutely necessary in adopting an executive order granting transgender rights in the state of New York. To say that he sidestepped the legislature is baloney. Baloney. The state legislature, specifically the state Senate, has been given the opportunity year after year to take up gender. And what have they done? Have they had the courage to even take a vote on it? Not a chance. The Assembly has passed that every single year since it was introduced. So I applaud the governor, and I do think that it's important, given that what is likely to be still litigation over the validity of that action, that it is important that we recognize all of our employees and their potential domestic partners for these rights, and so that they're not sitting at their desk or out plowing our, those are represented employees, and this only relates to our non-represented employees. But we want to make sure our employees are focused on their work, not on how they're going to keep their children healthy. We did look at other employers, specifically municipal employers and some of the other major employers in town. One of the things that really sort of stood out to me is that employers that had granted same-sex domestic partner benefits have generally chosen to expand them. The University of Rochester has done that. The City of Rochester has done that. But there are other municipalities that have chosen to extend domestic partner benefits to all of their employees. We heard talk about the policy that would underlie this. Just as we did back then, we have looked at policies that other institutions have put together, and we have drafted a policy that I think, as Ken suggested, will really reflect that domestic partnership is a serious, committed relationship between two people, and then and only then does it qualify for the benefits. So for all of those reasons, I will be voting in favor of this resolution.
All right, I haven't said anything up to now. Let's go back to the fact that I was here with Ken, and I also voted in affirmation for that same resolution back in 2001. But at that time, there was no other option available to domestic partners, especially those of the same sex, where, correct me if I'm wrong, but a marriage, first and foremost, is a legal partnership, is it not? I'm not an attorney. I'm asking the three attorneys here, is that correct?
Legal, i.e. enforceable.
There are
Obligations.
legal.
Yeah, but in this state, we now permit marriage between same-sex as well as partners of different sex, correct? We also offer the same rights to transgender?
Only thanks to the governor's executive order.
Yeah.
Which is sure to be, I suspect, sure to be challenged.
Yeah. Anyway, point being is, we now have an option today that we didn't have back in 2001, where looking for commitment for domestic partners to formally declare this as a legal partnership, that is a marriage, is it not? Right?
Same sex and opposite sex
Right.
couples can now get married in New York and throughout the nation.
So my view is, now that we have equal rights under the law, then why are we declaring the same coverage for domestic partners who choose not to be married, form a legal partnership so that they are, in fact, legally bound one another to support mutually in every aspect of life? What are we gaining by this resolution then?
Is that a rhetorical question?
Yes.
I think, well, if it is a rhetorical question, maybe it doesn't need an answer. But I think I answered a number of those. There's a number of reasons that we do that. But before we talk about the sanctity and the
Not so much sanctity as much
and the
as it is legal.
legal commitments
Legal
of
partnership.
marriage, there are entire law firms and lawyers, you've seen their ads on TV, you've seen their ads in the paper, that are in the business of getting married couples out of these legal obligations that they have. So maybe that's a less rhetorical, but a very real part of an answer to your rhetorical question.
But I think it's the way the law stands right now.
It also takes an effort to try to undermine those obligations, that you have to hire a lawyer and go through certain actions and such.
Which you don't have to get divorced. You can very easily get divorced.
Yes, and I've always found that the divorce, sadly, the emotional component of divorce is huge, but often it's expressed in fighting about property. So who's to say which is really the more tragic aspect of it? But in the end, the economics are the more difficult situation to resolve.
We had a couple come in and talk to us who were,
Louise?
I'm not going to
okay.
talk about names.
Well,
I'm going to say that they have said something that many people who are living together and not married have expressed, that it's a personal reason. They just don't want to get married. They each had been married separate to different people before and were divorced, and they had been together for over 20 years. They wanted to have the same rights. They just didn't want to go through the marriage again. And they have that right. But they have also asked that we grant them the right to the person that worked for the town to be able to cover the other person. And they had been asking for many, many years. So it's not just that they're not married, so therefore they're not entitled.
I think along the same lines of what you're saying, Louise, too, is that the policy embodies criteria. It's not just somebody that you go out and meet at the grocery store one day, and you're not going to maintain separate residences that, hey, well, why don't you come and be covered under my benefit over at work? We have specific criteria. We have to show financial interdependence between the couples. So it's not, it's not just a very loose interpretation as to what a domestic partner is. In fact,
And the interesting thing about that, Jason, is although there is that financial interdependence criteria for domestic partners, for couples who are not in fact married, for couples that are married, there is no criteria other than having the marriage license. And I mean, we know from our business that there are couples who are married that have absolutely no financial interdependence. They keep everything
and don't
separate.
live together.
And may not live together. And yet they would have the right, under a policy that doesn't extend benefits to domestic partners, to have their children covered under the town's employee benefits, to have their spouse, even though they don't live with them, even though they're not dependent on each other financially, covered by the employee benefits extended by the town. And that's, to me, that's just a little odd. It's just, if they have a piece of paper, they get the benefits regardless of their financial interdependence. And if they don't have the piece of paper, I don't care how long you may have been together for 30 years living as a married couple, but if you didn't go through the ceremony, no benefits for you or your children. That's, to me, odd.
And if I may go for the record, I have no opposition to domestic partnerships. People are free to do what they wish. And as far as the sanctity of marriage goes and such, I know people feel strongly about that. That's not at all something that enters into this for me. To me, it's the legal enforceable obligation imposed voluntarily on yourself to provide care for the other. And it is a legally enforceable obligation, so that one cannot just be left destitute in some instances, perhaps, as would be the case with a domestic partner. With a spouse, if my wife became disabled, I am obligated to provide for her, and that was the promise I made. when I married.
I think what Ken is suggesting, and I think it's true, that in many cases, the personal obligation that two people that are not married feel to each other to commit and support both financially, emotionally, and otherwise often outweighs, unfortunately perhaps, whatever commitment, legal commitment, married couples who have grown apart, often physically separated and whatnot else. I think we, as an employer, we're not forcing someone to marry or not to marry, but I do think we are recognizing that some of our employees are likely to be in that situation, and it is important to them that we make it possible, financially possible for them to satisfy that commitment that many people choose to legally submit to through marriage, and other people choose to personally commit to without the piece of paper.
In the state of New York, is it the same as, say, in California, where if you're living together for 7 years?
No. We do not have common law marriage in New York.
And do they any longer in California? I'm not sure.
When I was
Some
there,
states
I don't
do. Some
We did
states
probably at one
do.
time, but we don't anymore.
Any further comments? Thank you for the good and thorough discussion. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
No.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFanzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
No.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Motion passes 3-2. Matters of the supervisor. Tomorrow is Veterans Day, and truly an important holiday. Today, Jim and I both had the opportunity to speak with groups really at different ends of the age spectrum. Jim was at 12 Corners Middle School today, speaking with 8th graders about Veterans Day. And I had the great pleasure of being at the Legacy at Clover Blossom, speaking with an audience that included many World War II and Korean War veterans about the significance of Veterans Day. And Jim is a veteran. I know how much it means to you. To me, it's just humbling to be in the company of people that gave so much in the service of their nation in uniform, and in so many cases have given so much to their community, to their family, out of uniform since then. So tomorrow at 2 o'clock at our Brighton Veterans Memorial in Buckland Park on Westfall Road, we will be holding a ceremony, as we do every Veterans Day, since the Veterans Memorial was dedicated 3 years ago on Veterans Day, honoring the veterans of this community. And also, we take the opportunity to recognize and honor an organization or individual who has provided service to the veterans in our community. Last year, we recognized MCC and their Office of Veterans Services. Tomorrow, we're going to recognize the Rochester Vet Center, which is located in the, the Cross Bridge Plaza? Is that what that Cross Bridge office
Right there
is?
where
At the
Express
corner
right
of
across.
Winton Road and 590. You may have seen their van, the big Winnebago-sized mobile center that they have parked there. The Rochester Vet Center is part of a national group of vet centers that was originally established by the VA to serve Vietnam-era combat veterans. Now it serves combat veterans of the Vietnam era, but also the conflicts and wars that we have been in since that time. And I had the opportunity to tour their facility at their open house. They do great work, often one-on-one, therapy, but so much more. And so we will be recognizing them tomorrow. That is 2 o'clock at the Veterans Memorial in Buckland Park. And related to that, a couple weeks ago, really a special day here at Town Hall. The President of the French Republic, through the Honorary Council, the Honorary French Council, awarded the Chevalier of the Legion of Honor to Don Levine. Don is a resident of Brighton, 97 years old, who flew 35 missions. In the nose, how he got there, I know a guy my size couldn't fit in there, but 35 times he wriggled his way into the nose of that plane, got shot down or crash landed more than once.
Had to bail out once and crash landed another time. Unbelievable.
Don Levine is an American hero, and that ceremony that took place right here in this room was filmed, and we will be airing that on our cable access and community access channels tomorrow for the very first time in honor of Veterans Day. On Channel 12, you'll be able to see it at 7 a.m., 11 a.m., and 3 p.m. And on Channel 15, you'll be able to see it at 11 a.m., 4 p.m., and 9:30 p.m. It's moving for me just to talk about it. It was an extraordinary ceremony, and all of you were here, and what better way to honor Veterans Day than to, again, have everybody the chance to see a great American and a great Brighton resident, Don Levine, get that recognition from the French president. We'll talk a little bit about leaf pickup. It is that time of year, and we've talked about it a little bit. I think the leaves are falling quicker this year than they did last year. Last year, we hadn't even had our first killing frost yet. We had the latest killing frost ever last year. This year, the leaves seem to be coming down a lot quicker. I know there's an awful lot in front of my house piled between the sidewalk and the street, and I want to emphasize that. Please, I can't say this enough. I get letters from people asking me to say this, and I'm going to say it again. Please do not pile your leaves in the street. Why? They're dangerous to pedestrians. They're dangerous to cyclists. There are people trying to ride their bikes through. They can be dangerous to drivers, particularly on some of our narrower streets where people are literally weaving around leaf piles. And of course, if it's dangerous to drivers during the daytime, dangerous to pedestrians during the daytime, it's even more so at night. But it also causes problems to our storm drainage.
Yes, indeed.
Those leaves, if they're piled in the street, inevitably, as it rains, drain down to your storm grates if they are in the street, as they are in many neighborhoods. When those leaves block the storm grates, we get neighborhood flooding. We had some rain today. We're going to have some more rain later in the week. So please, if you have a sidewalk, pile your leaves between the sidewalk and the street. If you don't have a sidewalk, please place them on your lawn. Now, understandably, we've heard concerns they're going to sit there forever. We can't pick up all the leaves in town in a day or in a week. They don't all fall in a day or in a week. What we did do this year, in last year's budget, we restored much of the overtime that had been cut during the financial crisis. This past Saturday, and for the next 4 Saturdays, assuming the conditions warrant, we will have a full set of highway department crews out in your neighborhoods picking up your leaves. We believe that will help us more effectively and more efficiently pick up the leaves this year.
And
if you containerize your leaves, they will get picked up more quickly. and they won't be, causing die-off on your lawn either, but they will get picked up more quickly. They won't get in the storm drains. They won't make your neighborhood look messy. The leaves won't blow around when we get the wind. Louise?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I did 2 barrels and 4 bags worth of leaves, and then I couldn't do any more. But anyway, I had them out front, and when they are containerized, we get them picked up every week on Tuesday in Roselawn. And there's lots more for me because I have a huge maple tree. But it's amazing. I said to one of my neighbors was spending all day on Saturday raking his leaves and putting them in the street. And I didn't know how to approach him, but I finally said, you're not supposed to put them in the street. And he said, really? I said, really? I said, if you want them picked up quicker, put them on your lawn. He says, well, I didn't know that. And he went and he raked them all onto his lawn. So I said, thank you. But I don't know, as many times as you say it, as many times that is in a column of yours, people still don't get it. So if you can do it nicely and talk to a neighbor that's continually putting them in the street, say something they may not know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Louise. That's a good reminder. And I know, Tim, your crews have been out working for a couple of weeks now. They're close to completing their first pass through town, starting in the western part of Brighton and heading east.
Right. We're actually back out on the west side tomorrow,
Beautiful.
Bill.
Beautiful.
The one thing I would like to add is for people to look at the town website, townofbrighton.org. Right on the homepage, you can click on one of the buttons on the left side for leaf collection. It'll give you 2 maps, one for containerized pickup, one for bulk pickup. It'll show you where we anticipate working on one day and the following day, and generally that's available at the end of the previous business day, or you can check it first thing in the morning, and that'll tell you how we're progressing. So if you can get your leaves out timely, as the trucks come around, they will get picked up quicker. I will say, we had an interesting phone call today in the office asking how late we will be picking up leaves this year. And typically we go to the week after Thanksgiving. We know that sometimes Thanksgiving weekend is a weekend people get out because it's a 4-day weekend perhaps for some people. But I would encourage people, because the leaves are generally down at this point, and you can see that most of the trees have lost their leaves, get your leaves raked out sooner than later. The longer you procrastinate, the more trips we have to make through town.
The wetter they get, the more they are likely to
right,
cause damage to your lawn.
Right, and then that's what I was going to say too, Bill. If the weather does change, those leaves that are put out into the street, if we have to plow, will get pushed back out of the street, and it makes it that much harder for not only the residents but the crews to get those leaves ultimately collected. But we will try to work as late as we can into the season, as long as weather permits, but I would encourage everybody to get the leaves out sooner than later.
Tim, the phone number, just people, if people do have a problem, the number that they can call?
The dispatch over at the Operations Center is 784-5280. You can also call directly into the Public Works Department. We'll help you out there. 784-5221 is one of our clerk's phone numbers, but call me at 784-5223. I'll take the calls as well, and if you got questions, we'll try to answer them.
Thanks, Tim.
Will you take leaves that are in plastic bags?
Louise, that is another good question, because I saw that just the other day, that there were about 10 bags, plastic, bags of leaves, and I'm not sure, we haven't collected leaves in plastic for probably 20 plus years at this point.
Because I put
New
mine
residents sometimes don't.
Yeah, and
Well,
sometimes it becomes, depending on where you come from, that could be actually something new. But it's we haven't done that because we cannot process the leaves. We do recycle a lot of the green vegetation we collect in town throughout the year, leaves being one of them. And if they're in plastic, we just can't process them because the plastic does not biodegrade, nor is it easy shredded up in the equipment.
So do you just leave those two?
Yeah, we would not pick those up,
Well,
Chris.
why I
We'd
asked-
probably tag them.
is that I was at a store yesterday because I ran out of the bags and I had the paper bags. And I asked them if they had leaf bags, and they pointed me to where their garbage bags were. and it said leaf and lawn bags, and they were black plastic bags.
Yeah, well,
I
we,
didn't buy them.
we can't control the labeling that the manufacturer uses, but, you know, many communities, and I know a lot of our neighboring communities do not pick up the plastic either, so that seems to be the norm for this area.
And some communities not far from here don't pick up leaves at all. I spoke with someone who lives in a town that will remain nameless, and in that particular town, you pay $125 for the privilege of taking your own leaves to the town's recycling center.
And you have to transport?
You have to transport them. You can take other refuse, but they don't pick anything up. They don't have brush, lawn and garden debris. And so I think it's important. Yeah, people do come to Brighton from different places, and every place is a little bit different. But thank you to your highway department crews who I think give us good value for the.
And it's something people have really appreciated. Yep. And while people were talking, the very first moments, by experiment, I just simply put in Brighton leaf pickup. The site came right up. The map is right here. I'm looking right at it. Couldn't be easier to see, and it stops just next to my neighborhood for tomorrow. But and are you going east or west, Tim?
Is that the containerized?
Containerized
That's
is to the one side.
Chris, I think that was done just for your benefit tonight.
Well, just for tonight.
Just for tonight, yeah. No, we generally
Chose
move.
both.
Yeah, we generally move west to east. As things get a little bit more intense, sometimes we do focus in some of the areas that are heavier with the trees. I think I heard some point that each tree has obviously thousands of leaves, some up to 10,000 leaves. And as we are a tree city, obviously we value our trees, but they certainly, pose a problem at this time of the year to get around timely and to get everything collected. But again, thanks to the board for reinstituting the overtime. I think that's going to make a huge difference this year.
For homeowners, please, an awful lot of people do have a service come in and take care of them. My experience is, though, that they also pile them up at the curb. And my own neighbor had a lawn service come, and the fellow was blowing them all right into the street. Piled them into the street, and I walked over and politely said, gee, you're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to be in the lawn. He stopped, looked shocked, and looked at me. He said, this is Brighton, isn't it? And I said, yes, it is. And he said, well, I'm leaving them here in the street. And I said, no, in the town of Brighton, we do pick them up, but they're supposed to be on the lawn, not in the street. So please say something to your services.
And since you mention services, our landscape services have another option, don't they, Tim? They can take their leaves directly.
They can, if they get a permit, they can take them directly over to our, if we want to call it our, green processing facility where we recycle most of our green wastes. But we also, and it's a good point, Bill, for any residents in town, they can go over to the operations center. We have an area that's fenced off where you can go in and drop off yard debris on your own. So if you do have just a few bags and you want to get rid of them, or even loose stuff, bulk stuff, you can go over to the highway. It's basically 24/7. There's no security in this area to that there's a gate that precludes you from doing this after hours or anything, and you can empty that up, and it does help us.
But we really do encourage lawn and landscape services to take the leaves. Again, it'll help keep your neighborhood clean. It'll avoid the problem of getting into the storm drains. And your whole front lawn will look nice. So, all right. Last, I just want to, acknowledge, and really on behalf of all of us who were, part of the election this year, thank you to everybody that came out last Tuesday and voted, and a particular thanks to the election inspectors who spend a 16, 17-hour day making sure all of us can exercise our democratic freedoms that our veterans fought so hard to give us. So our thanks to everybody that made Election Day possible. Matters of the attorney?
I have none, thank you.
Matters of the clerk?
Thanks for the election, and just repeating that, we have 156 election inspectors in Brighton. So there's 156, largely Brighton residents, not entirely, but of our neighbors. And certainly if anyone I tend to shy away from mentioning the length of the day when making the spiel, but certainly if anyone wishes to take part in that and help fulfill some civic duty, by all means, reach out to my office and I can put you in touch with the folks at the Board of Elections who you want to talk to about volunteering. You do get paid, so not volunteering, but participating in that very crucial aspect of our democracy. And just with again, Veterans Day is tomorrow. I had opportunity last week to attend another, you spoke about the Rochester Vet Center here in Brighton, but had opportunity to attend the Veterans Outreach Center Stars and Stripes celebration last week, and didn't really know too much about it going in, but I gotta say it was, former Greece Chief Todd Baxter's running that organization now very well, and unbelievably moving event. So that Veterans Outreach Center, again, started by Vietnam vets, to take care of their own when everybody else was not taking care of them. And to see they had tables across at the convention center with place settings with a votive candle for local service members, as well as our PD officer Pearson, who have given their lives in service of our country, and just those head tables, where it was unbelievable. It was extremely moving, and that it's a phenomenal organization that places vets and helps vets get jobs and housing, and so I feel if you're looking out, I know that Rock the Day is coming up soon, so certainly I would encourage folks to keep them in mind for that coming up here.
They
It's really
also
amazing.
operate the flag store.
And the flag store on South Ave,
flag,
absolutely. Yeah, right in between their buildings.
American-made flags, and you're going to be supporting a great organization.
What is the full name,
Absolutely.
Stars and Stripes?
It was the Stars and Stripes celebration is what the event was.
But it's the Veterans Outreach Center.
Okay.
Matters of the town board. Thanks, Dan. Any matters of the town board? Then I just want to thank our video crew tonight, and can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Thank you for being here tonight. Just a reminder, again, tomorrow is Veterans Day. Town Hall will be closed, and we'll see you here for our next town board meeting, which is, again, Tuesday night, November 24th, a day early because of Thanksgiving. Have a great evening, everybody.
Tuesday.